So from my perspective, liberal democracy is a desirable good for Muslim societies. And that also that the question is that it happens in process and in context. It doesn't just somehow descend from heaven, although I would like that very much if it can, or that it can just one overnight happen for any society. The second affirmation is that tradition is indeed, it does matter tremendously to the project of liberal democracy, and very much the question is how rather than whether or not. And as to the relevance of tradition, briefly to say that I think democracy, liberal democracy, to be established and promoted and institutionalized needs people to struggle. And people have to be motivated to struggle and to make sacrifices and to accept challenges. And for any people of a tradition, their tradition will be a tremendous resource for that motivation and drive. And the question is how commitment are formed and how that evolves. So my perspective is that tradition is a matter that is in the eyes of the beholder. So I put the human person at the very center of what tradition is and what it can mean. That by its very nature and function, traditions have to offer options and to some extent have to be ambiguous and contestable because they have to offer a range of responses over extended periods of time to a multitude of types of societies and communities and contexts. So the diversity and ambiguity, contestability of tradition is in fact in its very nature and in its value to every human society, that it gives those options and it is only people who make the choices. That's why I say it is in the eyes of the beholder. Because it's persons who have make choices as to what the tradition means regarding any particular issue that might arise or regarding a range of issues or a major question like liberal democracy. And the point here I would like to, again, to emphasize it is in the eyes of the beholder is that choices will be made, either by the actor or the agent herself or by someone else on her behalf. So not making a choice is a choice by default. And since I am already implicated in the choice that is made on my behalf, I would rather make my own choices. That's my philosophy. And therefore, the question is very much about what choices people can make legitimately and plausibly from their respective traditions. Another point briefly to mention is that traditions or communities are not entities that act. We talk about Islam, we talk about Islamic tradition, we talk about various types of societies. These are metaphors because they are not agents who act as such. It's always people who act. And that's why I say I place the person at the center of it all. And so Islam does not do anything. It is Muslims who do in relation to their understanding and practice of Islam. And therefore the question for me would be people in history, people in context, in location. Context is extremely important both for the availability and viability of the choices that people can make. Some choices may not be available at certain times or certain settings, or may not be viable if they are made. So I think context is extremely important and so on. Now, because of context extreme importance, I would like to emphasize a dramatic and drastic shift in the context of Muslim societies at large, globally, and communities, even in minority situations, from the pre-colonial to the post-colonial. Already colonialism has been mentioned, and I think it is extremely important to emphasize that colonialism transformed the worlds of Muslims for better and for worse, or maybe one of the two, either better or worse, or I say better and worse. But the point is that it is no longer the world in which most of this tradition has played out historically. And an awareness of the nature of the contemporary context of Muslim societies is extremely important. It is therefore grossly misleading to expect continuity in the Islamic tradition for Muslims to interact with from the pre-colonial to the post-colonial. or to compare pre-colonial and post-colonial Muslim societies. There has been a significant rupture in many ways, although, of course, there's always the imagination of continuity that could be as powerful. Finally, just to stay with the time limit here, I think that the Muslim tradition or the Islamic tradition offers the resources which continue to be very powerful. And the question is how those resources are used by Muslims as they pursue their particular objectives, whatever that may be. And I would conclude by just citing three iconic moments in early Muslim history, which is the most powerful symbolically and normatively for Muslims, which is, and I think most of us who are familiar with Islamic history would know this, the speech that Abu Bakr, radiallahu anhu, the first caliph, gave when he was affirmed as the caliph, the first successor of the Prophet, when he said, you have the obligation to obey me to the extent that I obey God in conducting your affairs. And if I fail to honor that, I have no right to demand your obedience to me. The second incident is in the election of the third caliph, the finalists were Uthman and Ali ibn Abi Talib. And when Ali was asked, would he conduct his term of office, as it were, in the exact model of the two preceding caliphs, Umar and Abu Bakr, and Ali said, no, I will only follow my opinion, whether it agrees with them or not. He was honest, but maybe not political enough. Uthman said, yes, I will follow exact model of the preceding caliphs. But when he mismanaged the affairs of the community and he was being threatened with a rebellion, he said, I refuse to abdicate a position bestowed on me by God. And when you look at these situations and what message you draw from them, what understanding you bring forward, and for me, it is the agent of the person who does those choices. For me, Abu Bakr's choice is a choice for democratic accountability, although it is difficult to talk about it in those terms at that time. And so was Ali, and so was Uthman in different ways. But the point is, again, the question of how do we interpret that history and how we learn from it. I thought that might be good opening remarks. Thank you very much.